everybody. Welcome to our third and final episode of Designing for Health and Wellness. In our first two episodes, our guests, Leah and Margit, talked about their personal relationship with the cannabis plant and how that got them on the path that they are professionally. In the second episode, we talked a little bit about dispensaries and the difference between the journey for a medical cannabis patient and adult use / recreational consumer in a dispensary. And those were our two topics of focus the last time we talked. Today, we're going to look at the future of dispensaries. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the entire industry and how we can make life better for medical cannabis patients and also, of course, for adult use patients who might be medicating whether they know it or not. So I'm going to introduce you to Margit. Margit is a friend, a colleague, and also a client of mine. She's an architect of renown. She's very, very well known in the resort industry for her innovation in resort and hospitality design. She's also sought after in the retail industries for shops and restaurants. And now she's in the cannabis world doing some design of dispensary and some other facilities as well. And then after Margit, actually, we're going to finish with Margit, but before we talk to Margit, we're going to talk to Leah. And Dr. Leah is a doctor of pharmacy, and she works with patients, teaching them how to use cannabis in conjunction with other pharmaceuticals, how to use it in different times of their day. She looks at all different kinds of segments of the cannabis plant and what would help her patients. And she's got some very definite ideas on how a dispensary might enhance health and wellness. So I'm going to start with Dr. Leah and ask her a couple questions, and she's got some excellent things to share today. So Leah, we've talked about what needs to change to embrace medical cannabis patients more at a dispensary. What would you like to see change at the dispensary level?
A couple of things. The first thing is even for the rec users. So I'm going to actually go rec users at this point, even though, and I agree with you, Georgie, I always say that. I think that the rec users say that they're rec users or adult use users, but in all reality, in my opinion, if you're using it because you're treating something, still being used as medicine. So for these types of patients, or for the rec users, or even for the medicinal cannabis users, my biggest focus is I want to see patients and rec users getting away from high dose THC products, all of them. And the reason is, and the big reason, and by a high dose, I mean specifically flower. And the reason is because some high doses are useful, but when people go for flower specifically, a lot of patients or rec users will go for the highest percentage that they could find. And that is really not the best one to go for. The reason is because the higher percentages, a lot of times when growers were to focus on the percentage, they actually don't focus so much on the terpenes and the other beneficial parts of the plant. So what I always explain is that if you go to a dispensary, what you really should be doing is smelling. That is the number one thing, because what smells amazing to one patient or to one rec user is not going to smell that good to somebody else. And why that is so important is because the terpenes in each of the flower actually are different and have different medicinal properties. So you could smell, for example, limonene. Limonene is really great, or linalool, both of them. Limonene and linalool are really great for relaxation, and limonene specifically for like an antidepressant type of effect. So if you're going into a dispensary and you smell one of the flower and you're like, wow, that smells orangey, that smells delicious, I want to smoke that. Even if that is only, or vape it, if that's only 15% THC, that's fine, because that means that product has what your body is looking for in the plant. It's the same thing with, so patients who really have more of a pain effect, they're not going to be as attracted to those two strains. They're going to be attracted to more of other types of terpenes. So that's why the biggest thing is so I always say when you go into a dispensary, bud tenders should be trained on encouraging people to smell and explaining that the high THC, and they can do this. It's one of the few things that the bud tenders are allowed to talk about. They need to explain that the higher THC does not always doesn't always mean the most effective cannabis. So that's my biggest thing is I really would like both the bud tenders to change their focus on smelling and visual is nice too. I mean, obviously you want to look at it, it needs to be good looking to you, but the most important thing really is the smell. And in that smell really tells you, are these a group of terpenes my body needs? Is this not a group of terpenes my body needs? And like it's hit or miss. Two people could smell the same thing and one can say that smells amazing and one can say, oh, it doesn't really smell like anything or not really something I'm interested in. And that really shows you the difference in medicine. So that's one big thing I would want to change in dispensaries is the move away from the high focus on high THC, especially for the plant-based material.
You know, we should have another podcast sometime and talk about all the terpenes and things like that, because you explained just that little bit was very easy to understand. So we might think about that in the future.
Absolutely.
So tell me about, as far as the sticks and bricks of the dispensary, is there anything, what would you think would be the ideal place to go and purchase medicinal cannabis?
So I love the idea that we talked about last time, dispensary based, but I also would like a model almost opposite, like clinic based, where it's specifically a clinic for medical patients. And there is a dispensary that is purposefully set up so that it makes the process kind of go through. So for example, you start with, you would start with the like the clinician that you're seeing, and then you discuss all your meds and everything. And instead of having to drive around and go find it, then you have your night, like pretty much exactly what Margit was talking about. I want that right attached to the clinic so that you go right in and there's literally, you go in one door, you sit in a waiting room, you go in a nice waiting room, like Margit said, somewhere you can sit where patients aren't standing around and waiting. You're sitting and like relaxed, waiting for your clinician. You go see them. And then on the way out of the facility, you're going through the dispensary where the physician clinician can just send what they specifically want. And not only is it better, because for me, I just kind of go based off of products that I know the dispensaries have near the patient, where we would be able, the clinicians could tailor to good, reputable products they know are very effective. They know the companies, they've seen the certificate of analysis, and they know it's a reputable lab testing them. And then that way patients don't have questions of, well, I very often get patients saying, oh, I went into a dispensary and I know you asked for blank, but they didn't have it in stock, even though I had just looked at the map. And then they're like, so they gave me this instead. And half the time it has nothing, not even similar to what I had recommended. So this way, it's like, we know that way the clinicians will know what's in stock, know what the dispensary carries. And that way it also makes it for more educated bud tenders, because the bud tenders, I would say everybody gets kind of curious when they're on the job with things. So when the clinicians are talking to the bud tenders, because they're going to go back and forth, because the bud tenders might say the patient has another question about blah, 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 that would get passed on to a clinician. So the bud tenders themselves will start learning a lot and know what to pass on to the clinicians and what not, and what they can handle on their own. And it just makes it so it's just a more comprehensive, from start to end, where the patient gets treated the whole time. And there's not any of this ambiguous space where the patient has to worry about, well, what do I do here?
And Margit said she had a question for you.
Sure.
I'm going to go back to the first question. I remember getting tested by my arm. Like they would put these vials of different things, allergens and stuff like that. Like that's a muscle test of some sort, right?
Okay, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so that's very much similar to what you're saying about smell it. If it smells good to you, then it is good for you, which I'd never even thought about before. I think that's very, very cool. It's very much like that same test. I mean, I had this homeopathic doctor had like a 100 little pills of stuff, and he was trying to figure out why was I had some allergy reaction,
Mhm.
and he came up with that I had a parasite. And then I had to get rid of the parasite in my body, which was creating a lot of inflammation. And I went through a parasite treatment for like 30 days, and boom, I didn't have to take Claritin like 7/24, and I was clear.
That's awesome.
But nobody else could treat me until that doctor, who had just almost like Chinese medicine, like figured out what was wrong with me. So I commend you on making that comment, because I would never have thought about that.
I look at it kind of like pheromones,
Yeah.
but how we're drawn to pheromones, that you wouldn't be drawn to the same pheromones, from somebody that I might be. And that has the same thing with the plant. I mean, it's an interactive kind of relationship in a way.
I also explain to people, it's also your body asking for something. And that sounds funny. So sometimes you might taste something and be like there are times I've tasted products and I'm like, oh, that's a little strong. And like, it's not even a strong, it's not even a strong herbal flavor. It's a strong, all the carriers they have to put with it, so it becomes dissolvable and all that mess. And you're just like, this tastes like an artificially sweet something. So what I always say is ingest it. And if you're going to ingest it a second time, if you kind of feel like your mouth is trying to spit it out while you're trying to put it in, and I mean, there's times where people don't take it anymore. That means your body has said no. Now, if it tastes kind of like, oh, that's a little bitter, or something the first time, and then the next time you have it, your body goes, oh, please more. That actually means you need to bypass the flavor and your body wants it. There's actually this great product in California that is a non-alcoholic wine, actually, that's cannabis infused. And what I noticed is when I first tasted it, I'm like, kind of like a kombucha, like in a red wine had a baby. So it's like, it's not like a bad flavor. It's a flavor you got to get used to. But the next day I had another glass just to see it tasted 1,000 times better, even though nothing really changed. And then I started, and I wasn't sipping it, I was chugging it. And I was like, oh, no, slow down. This is medicine, drink it slowly. But then it really showed me that it's really, my body did want that. So your body is extremely intelligent. It knows what it wants and what it doesn't want. And the problem is half the time we don't listen to it. Like I took my allergy test, or my digestive instability test. And I know all the things I can't have. And it's so funny because if I have any of those, everything is out of whack. If I have none of those, I can eat a lot of pretty much all the good stuff and I won't gain a pound. And my body wants it. But the second I have even like, I was like, I want a little taste of my husband's cornbread, just nothing, like a nothing piece. I just want to have a little, almost a lick of it, because I miss my being able to eat gluten. And literally within 10 minutes back, because my body knows it's not right for it. So same thing with cannabis, your body, the smell and the taste, your body knows. Technically you're supposed to taste cannabis and know if it's good for you too, but they're not going to let you do that at a dispensary, sadly.
That's an interesting concept, being able to, have a flight.
Yeah, I've been thinking that would be wonderful for so long, because people don't really understand terpenes. And my biggest focus would be to have a dispensary that would do flights, that would have, this one is very strong in limonene. This is very strong in humulene. This is very strong in linalool. Let's have people try them and say, oh, okay, so I like this one the best. Well, that tells me that it has this in it, and this is why my body is pulling for this, because this is the help that it's looking for. That would be amazing. But I think it's the combination of you can't ingest or inhale on the premises of a dispensary unless it's in a consumption lounge attached to such dispensary. So like Barbary Coast up in San Francisco does it. But like any of the consumption lounges, this is something they should do, because as patients, what better way otherwise you're just blindly purchasing and you're hoping for the best. And so you buy, let's say 3.5 grams of a strain, and then it ends up, nope, it wasn't what you needed at all. So then you just wasted all of that, versus a flight would be perfect. You decide, okay, you pay for the flight, of course, you pay for each one and you try it like a pea-sized amount. And then based off of your response, you then buy a month's worth of what worked for you. So that way you have your monthly medication.
I think we should lobby that. And you know what, this is
a great idea.
This is a really good segue, because in a way what we're talking about is designing for health and wellness. And that means that you already, that what we doctors call, and I've heard this called before, that placebo effect. As soon as you walk into a doctor's office or a place you're going to be well taken care of, you're already feeling better. So Margit, I know that you've got some, that you've been working with a new prototype for an all-encompassing cannabis store that would have all these elements in it. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Well, I really see the dispensary sector slowly moving towards a full cannabis experience as an operator, right? Just like a full service restaurant. I know the activists are working really hard right now at the regulatory level to try to get more freedom so that we can have this combined services approach. I really envision a space that encompasses retail, adult use, medical use, with consultation rooms, and then the dispensary, obviously, and the consumption lounge with food and beverage. It's a all-in-one kind of concept. I mean, I even see spas slowly, if we can get some regulations, but there are cannabis treatments for the body that are topical that would go a long way in the spa environment. I said, why not? It's like you go to a restaurant and you order up, some food and drinks, you might get something to go, and you might buy a t-shirt on the way out. That's what we do. And I think that, some operators will lean heavily on adult use and some medical and then some consumption. I think but that's what we do. It's a free market, right? And we need to treat it like a free market and quit restricting it so much, because it is America and that's how we operate, right? So I've been kind of working on a prototype. And let me share my screen. I actually got this image off the internet, so I'm not taking credit for it. But as we were discussing, as I envision this business model that embraces kind of the full range of cannabis offerings, with hospitality and retail combined, an operator can maybe achieve a higher profitability. One plays off the other, obviously, just like in any kind of typical food service operation, right? So what I like about this plan, and I'll show you a little bit. So I like this plan because you walk into this kind of interesting landscape courtyard, which I kind of put some images down here. So I kind of, as you walk into the facility, you're having a nice, relaxed kind of atmosphere, and maybe there's some seating out there, so you can either wait outside or you can wait inside, right? In typical cannabis, we have either secured, controlled entry point, and then when you come into the actual retail area, there's some seating for people who need to rest or wait, or their friends are shopping and they're just hanging out with them. So I think that there's a retail component that's similar at the front of house. Then going into the dispensary, there's a consultation room here. There's all the different products. And then I kind of like this because it has this kind of canna bar in the middle. And maybe that is where, Dr. Leah was saying, can we have a flight? Can we test? Can we try before we buy, right? Maybe that's on this side of the wall, right? And then on the other side of the wall is your lounge. You have booth seating, you have some nice, interesting, this is like another tree inside the building, some lounge seating all the way around. This gives us, a full spectrum of cannabis experience. And some people may just come in and get the non-controlled substances here. This might be your CBD. This might be a kind of cannabis cup or a thing or a bong or something you're going to take to go, or you might just go back. You might do all three of these things, but I think that all of these functions can live in the same building. And I think they should be able to be allowed to. you know, the thing that this plan is missing is a kitchen for food service, you know, probably proper bathrooms, and maybe an outdoor area, you know, somewhere for smoking if it's allowed in the jurisdiction. And the other things I just kind of put in here, some imagery of how, you know, what would the vibe look like? And this is just one vibe. This is my kind of contemporary natural, you know, natural materials vibe. But, you know, if you had an old Victorian home you wanted to convert, or you had a high-rise penthouse that you wanted to convert, I mean, there's a lot of ways to create the vibe. I mean, design is, you know, universal. So this is just some ideas. You know, I really like this image here, these kind of cool glass doors and walls that kind of come up and over and create enclosures for certain kinds of functions or products. Really loving these big, huge cut logs for tables, chairs, and benches. There's a lot of ways to do it. I love this harvest sign made out of plants in the wall. So I think this kind of represents kind of the contemporary, you know, dispensary location. You know, it's just a nice vibe to me. You know, it makes it feel more comfortable.
So Margit, when would you say would be the right time? Somebody's just going through the licensing process and they're going to open a dispensary. What is the time that they should contact you for design and architecture?
Well, typically they contact me to get their conditional use permit and their state licensure. So we're in order to get even to the building department, prior to the building department, you need a conditional use permit application, and those are, you know, highly sought after. So there might only be 25 of them allowed in the city, and they have 100 applicants. You don't need building sections and building details. You need kind of a schematic set of drawings to go with the conditional use permit. So they'll contact me first for those, and then we'll move forward with a design after they get their approval from the city or jurisdiction for that use permit. And then we move forward. So they contact pretty early.
They should come to you from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they have to contact somebody to produce this. The building department, they usually don't care about all this. And if you're going to improve the building on the exterior, they want to see this. The imagery is fine, and some technical drawings. They don't really care about color boards and interiors and what it looks like and all the other pretty stuff. But they want to see kind of a planning department process, site plan, floor plan, elevation, security plan. And then that security plan actually goes to your state licensing application as well. So we help them out with those. Those are special diagrams that are on 8.5 by 11 sheets, and those go to the state for the state permit.
Well, there's a lot that you know that I'm always surprised at. Leah, would you like to add anything before we wrap?
Wow, I know nothing about that side of the field, and it's actually wonderful to learn a lot. Like, you were speaking about all the things you need. I'm like, oh wow, just to get a dispensary, I didn't realize there was just so much even pre-planning before they even think about anything else, before they even think about products. So it's amazing. But no, I think the biggest, I think I love what Margit did here. I think this is exactly what we need in the industry. I agree, we need to have our facilities to be more open to allow for use on site. I think that's huge, especially because there are people so for example, like, and I hate to use it for this example, but people sometimes will go to a bar because they don't want to drink at home, and they want to go and they want it to be social versus drinking alone by themselves at home. And a lot of people with cannabis want the same thing. They want to be in a social event where they can, and it could simply just be that they have depression, and it makes them feel social and makes them feel happy, and they would like to do that with other people than being by themselves. And so whether it's for rec or medicinal, I think it's wonderful and really important to have a place for people who want to smoke because or vape or utilize in general, because in the state of New York, in the city, you can actually utilize cannabis anywhere you can smoke a cigarette. So, and in California, you can only do it in the privacy of your own home. And there are many people who live in apartments that don't have the privacy of their own home to smoke in, and they're not allowed to smoke on the street. And so for those who decide to partake in the inhalation version of medicating, again, whether adult use or not, or medicinal, it really is really important to have a place. So I think this is awesome. And the push to have more locations to be able to utilize would be really helpful for patients, and even more so showing a patient how to utilize. That's one thing we didn't discuss here. And it seems so for those who utilize, it's, oh, I've been using for forever, I don't even think twice about it. But there are many people that might come in and say, well, I want to inhale, I'm okay with inhaling, I don't mind that, but what, you just gave me a bunch of flour, what do I do with it? Like, I've seen those rolled, cannabis pre-rolls. Like, can I make this into this? How do I do it? Can you do it for me? And devices and stuff like that. So sometimes it can simply be that people don't want to feel ignorant about this type of stuff. So they say, okay, they take it home, and then they don't ask the butt tenders how to use it, which again, the butt tenders can absolutely explain to them how. So they kind of hope, and the same thing with gummies. At a place like this, somebody can say, okay, so since you only want to use 1 milligram of THC, this gummy has 5 milligrams. So, we're going to cut that into fifths. And so that's how you're going to take it. And that's how you're going to take that very low micro dose, since you want a micro dose on this. And this is, so again, the consumption area is more than just, hey, let's go have fun. It's also a place to learn how to use your medicine, to partake with others. So you actually have almost a community support for the use of your medication. And I just think that the consumption part is so important. And there are so many places that don't allow consumption. So it would be it's a great component to include.
I think that'd be something great to talk about later too. So I wanted to thank you both. And if you've got questions, now if you've got medical cannabis and health related questions, please reach out to Dr. Leah. Her email address is, I have it down here, Dr. Leah at Alchemist. Tell us what it is.
Sure. It's DRLEAH, which is Dr. Leah, at alchemistcannabisconsulting.com. It's a bit long. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if that didn't work, find me on LinkedIn, and then we'll connect, and I can send you my email address.
That sounds wonderful. Margit, want to share you've got it on your screen, which is very smart of you.
Oh, that's very smart.
Except you're muted.
Margit at fordesigns.com.
Thank you very much, Margit. If you're going to be, if you're in the, and I'll say the Southwest, because I think you get your license in Arizona and Texas. Well, Texas isn't building anything. Are you licensed in Arizona?
Yeah, Arizona, Texas.
Nevada?
No, Hawaii, Florida, New York, and Pennsylvania.
So if you're any of those states, you can get in touch with Margit, and she will help you get going on your dispensary of wonderfulness. And I'm Georgie at GBG and Associates. And if you want some help in communications, public relations, any kind of marketing strategies, I'd be glad to help you with that too. Thank you for joining us. And if you'd like these recordings, we'll make them available to you if you send us a special request. Thank you.